Welcome back, ladies, gentlemen, and NBs, and thank you for tuning back into St. Andrew TV, a cure for your Monday blues. I am, of course, your host, Andrew, and today we are going to be going over the phrase, "You're a daisy," or just the word daisy. How I've set up the video today is we are going over the definition of what people meant when they used the term daisy, and the three separate instances that Val Kilmer's Doc Holliday used it in the movie Tombstone. So let's get into it.
No one on the corner has a wagon like us. Hit me on my burner prepaid wireless. We pack and deliver like UPS trucks. Already gonna hell just pumping that gas. All I wanna do is and ching and take your money. All I wanna do is and ching and take your money.
Now, with everything that is said, context is always important. When I use the term daisy, I don't mean it literally. I'm not talking about the flower. You're a daisy. And the other thing we will go into a little bit, but not deep dive into it, is the symbolism that the daisy represents. As with many other flowers, they usually symbolize something in old mythology. Today we will be hyper-focusing on the usage of the word daisy during the Victorian era. The use of the word daisy became everyday conversation during the latter half of the 1870s, as you can see by these articles that I pulled from the internet. These newspaper articles obviously are using the phrase as an idiom, as does Doc Holliday in the movie Tombstone. The term daisy itself is describing a person or something that means wonderful or good or a cut above. But that is where the context of this idiom takes form. So as many of us know, Val Kilmer's Doc Holliday was a snarky, flamboyant, and sarcastic character. And now that we have a better understanding historically of the idiom itself, we are going to apply it with every time Doc Holliday says it in the movie Tombstone. Number one.
Isn't that a daisy?
This is the introduction scene to Doc Holliday himself while he is playing cards. This one is pretty self-explanatory as he lays down his hand of cards, showing that they are superior than the one across the table from him, meaning he wins the pot. He was obviously being snarky in this scene, letting him know that the daisy at hand was his actual hand of cards, stating that it was the best in its class, a cut above. Number two.
You're a daisy if you do.
Where have I heard that before? You're a daisy if you do. You're a daisy if you do. Because you're a daisy if you do. Oh. This was said to Frank McLaury at the lot behind the OK Corral where the gunfight ensued. Frank McLaury said he was going to shoot Doc Holliday dead, and Doc Holliday says, "You're a daisy if you do." Now, there are three scenarios that I think that this phrase means in this certain circumstance, two of which are widely talked about, and the third one is kind of my own personal theory, and you guys can let me know down in the comments which one fits the best, I guess, in your world. Like I said, conversation is subjective and context is important. Scenario one, "You're a daisy if you do" means that if you shoot me down, Frank McLaury, then you're the first one to do so. Because no one has done it yet. This would put you at the top of your class, and you would be the superior gunman in this instance. Looking back on it, daisy means good or a cut above, so to speak. Scenario two, which is probably more likely, is Doc was being sarcastic. We all know his character by now. He was basically taunting Frank McLaury, which leads us into another Victorian era term, pushing up daisies. And if you tried to shoot him, he'd be a dead man. Because the thought is when you're laying in a coffin, when you push upward, you'll push up the daisies. More literally, your body will decompose and become fertilizer for any incoming foliage. This is scenario number three, and this is my own theory of what he meant. So as you all probably know already, Doc suffered from a very severe case of tuberculosis very early on in his life. And as some of you may know, tuberculosis was a death sentence at this time. There was no cure, there were no vaccines to combat it. Their best advice was to move to a warm, dry area, which is what Doc Holliday did. Tuberculosis comes with a lot of complications such as chronic pain, which you would regularly self-medicate. This is also why some alleged reports say that Doc was so calm and collected during the altercations that he would find himself in, because he knew that he was going to die a slow, painful death anyway, and if he did die during the gunfight, it was quick and painless. That's why a lot of people said he was the nerviest man with a gun in his hand. So my theory starts with, if Frank McLaury was going to shoot him dead, he would actually be doing Doc Holliday a favor. It would put him out of his misery when fighting tuberculosis. Daisy in this phrase would mean he would be wonderful. He would be a good Samaritan if he were to do that for John Henry Holliday. And as you could see from the movie, he was visited from the doctor right before the gunfight in the lot behind the OK Corral. So I just pieced those things together and looked at some historical reports of what tuberculosis did to the human body, and kind of came up with my own little theory of why he would be more than okay with having his life ended in a quick and more painless manner. Number 3.
You know Daisy. You know Daisy at all.
This is after Doc Holliday kills Ringo in the duel next to the Big Oak while he was stepping in for Wyatt Earp. This was a taunt directed at Ringo, stating that he was the inferior gunman. It was a sarcastic response to all the theatrics that happened prior to the gunfight that him and Holliday shared. Summed up, he was stating that he was all bark, no bite, and mainly stating that Ringo wasn't as good as advertised. A very Doc Holliday thing to say, especially in this instance. So there is some brief history and the dissection of all 3 occurrences where Doc Holliday said that in the movie Tombstone. And there is one more thing I would like to leave you with before we conclude today's video. Eyewitness accounts and a newspaper article has documentation of Doc Holliday actually using this term to Frank McLaury after the fight at the lot behind the OK Corral. It reads, Frank McLaury, I've got you now. Doc Holliday, blaze away. You're a daisy if you have. So when looking back at the movie Tombstone, I guess it was a little more accurate than we once initially thought. Thank you all for watching. If you've subscribed already, you're a daisy if you have. But if this is your first time across the channel, think about subscribing, because you're a daisy if you do.